Hello, this is Sarah Lyons. This is a video to show you some tips and tricks about the MLS and how to use it to save yourselves time and stay organized. So first off, I'm logged into NETRIS, which is the North Texas MLS. I went into search, residential, and details. So now I am typing in addresses for the properties I am looking for. A easy trick when you are being sent a list of addresses from a client and are not totally sure about the spelling or if it has secondary words in the address is to put a star. That way it doesn't accidentally exclude it. Then also too, if you're not finding one, you can also shorten the word, or you can put the street name but not put in the house number. In this case, I had some not coming up, and so I actually selected under contract and pending. This client is wanting to see some homes this weekend, and so I was putting in a list of homes that she was interested in. So in this case too, I put in that it would be single family residential and in Texas, so that way it wouldn't pull up as many false positives. So there are 9 properties here on the list, 9 matches. That's a good sign. And here are the 9 properties. So we are able to see that there are some under contract, so clearly I wouldn't be showing those to her. I would be selecting all and deselecting the ones that are under contract. You can also change their order here if you're trying to stay organized as far as where they are, but I'm going to go to map for this purpose to see how long it's going to take me to look at these properties. So we can see this one is super far over there, but also under contract. So it's possible that that's not the right address, but doesn't matter because this is just an example. So with these homes, I can hit directions to get an idea of how close they are together. You don't necessarily need to follow in their order. If you didn't like this order and say you wanted to start south and head north, you can just change their ordering. You can also add in here if you wanted to add a start location or a stop location. Say you are going to also look at some new construction in the process too, something like that, and you wanted to add in a model location that isn't necessarily the MLS listing location, that would be a great example. Or if you just want to get an idea of your own commute, you could add in your own address. So especially if it's potentially a changing list and or it is not something that I'm ready to schedule everything right this second, a really nice trick and thing that you can do to access everything on the MLS is you can create a cart for that person, and so that way we'll save all of these together. Easy way to keep track. And in this example, if you have somebody set up on their own MLS search, you can put it under their own cart, or you could create a brand new cart. So in this case, I'm going to create a new cart, and then you will create it based on however you see fit with the client's information and cart name. Typically, I will do the client's name on there, but you could do the date of when you plan to show them homes. That would be another way to easily access those. So I went ahead and created a folder for her, and I'm going ahead and putting in her information. And now it's going to be saved in her very own folder so we can see those properties. So that way when I'm back on my home screen, I can easily either click on her own account or on her specific cart to pull up her properties in the future. Also that way, if she ends up adding any more last minute properties, I can just go in and add them also to the cart, or remove the ones under contract, or after we see a home, if it's not a good fit, also I can do that. I can also leave notes on the properties. If we're looking at a whole bunch of properties, this is a good way for me to keep track of ones we've already seen versus not seen. If they're new to the area and we're looking at a whole bunch of areas, that can really help save a lot of time. Another helpful tip about the MLS is that you do have this recent search portal. It will allow you to find other searches you've done somewhat recently. Just keep in mind it's not forever. It does kind of time out. It'll only hold a certain number of saves. But if you hover over it, you can see the search criteria there kind of pop up to help remind you what you were looking at. Another really helpful thing under this residential details search to potentially do, as you have the default searches, but you can also add additional fields. I have found there are certain fields that are very helpful to add in. So for example, MLS number for listing agent, buyer's agent. This is good for whenever you're looking up your own stuff, or if you're looking up something about another agent and seeing what they've done as far as production. Or your own. Another thing that is helpful is if somebody has a specific high school or elementary school or middle school they are looking for. Same with if you're trying to identify, say, a builder, say a custom home builder or something, and look up the owner's name. Just keep in mind that sometimes if they add LLC versus not versus whatever, you may want to add a star at the end of the name. That way you don't miss something that's very close to it, but not necessarily the correct one. Same with if it's in an adult community and over 55 community. Say your client is insistent on having a gas range, you could go through and say, okay, I want to select anything that says gas. And that way you know the house probably has gas in it. You could list it like that. And then you could say or, and so it's if any of those are hitting. Or if your client is terrified of gas and says, I do not want to live in a home with gas, then you could say not. That way, if any of those hit, it will preclude that property. These are, there's a lot of different options on here to manually add different settings, different criteria. So you can really customize it quite a bit. Barns, all kinds of things. Some of these won't be helpful, so that's why they're not all defaulted in and overloading your options. Features about like flooring or foundation type. If somebody says, I don't want a pier and beam, you could exclude pier and beam, things like that. Another really cool feature under maps is that you can select the drive time. So one of my routine questions is asking where their new work location is, especially if somebody's moving from an area like LA that has heavy commutes. That's a priority to a lot of those people. So I will ask them, where's your new office, put it in, and then go ahead and select for them a drive commute, so that way they are not driving too far, because it's not as easy as just a radius circle. It's really going to depend on traffic patterns, how long of that commute is going to look like for them. So here's Lockheed Martin's location, 45-minute commute, say on a Wednesday, and we'll just have it show us what it thinks that drive pattern is. So you can see it's not just a easy radius. And then you can also go in and you can change that. So now it's narrowed more in based on that commute pattern. As you can see, they can get further, going a little bit west, but not as far if it was, say, in Kennedale or, Mansfield. That's not in those radius. Also, you can set overlays on there. So say they don't want to live in a certain area, you could actually map it like that, and then you can say exclude this shape. So then you're not having to mess around a lot with this actual pattern. You're able to just set exclusions in areas you don't want to include. You can also do that based on, say, a school district. If they requested a specific school or school district, you can also say, I want that, or I don't want that school district. And then also too, especially if the properties are somewhat rural, depending on their price range, it's also a good idea to select, like, I want them to be single family homes. And then I would routinely also say, like, not manufactured. Those are the three kind of options as far as mobile homes. So it's excluding those. And now we're able to see a much more narrowed down map. So I'm also going to say under 500,000 sales price with 3+ bedrooms, so that would include 3 or more. Because we don't have a specific selection for office, and a lot of times people will say I want a 3-bedroom plus office or a 4-bedroom, or they'll say I want a 4-bedroom but one of the bedrooms is an office. I will a lot of times set it as a 3+, and then let them know that they may have some false positives hit their portal, and that if that is the case, then they can just exclude them, rather than us missing out on a property that is advertised as a 3-bedroom plus office and us not see them. So that's typically how I will handle all of that. So this is an avatar, a pretend buyer here that I'm making a criteria for. They want a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,700 square feet. They want to have a 2-car garage. They don't want to have a pool. Say they don't want to have a homeowners association. So I would say either voluntary or none. And then you can see there are quite a lot of criteria within that. Now, if they said, I want to be in Fort Worth School District or Saginaw. So some of the school districts are joined. So Eagle Mountain, Saginaw's EMT Saginaw, Aledo. So now it's only going to show me ones that are in one of those school districts. We'll say Keller, we'll say Weatherford, and we'll leave it there. So now you can see that what were coming up before now are excluded. So like there's a school district over here, there's a school districts over here that are now not coming up. Same with White Settlement, same with Lake Worth. So it's only pulling up certain school districts. Now say they've told me I don't want to be in any of the west or the east side of 35. So then I could just basically exclude this and say exclude that location. And now it's updated without me having to mess with that drive time map. So now it's down to 134 properties, which is still a lot. Also, sometimes it's worth kind of moving the drive time out just a little bit, because for most people, if they have a 2-minute longer commute but a home that they love, they would be willing to take that choice. So I'm going to move these out a little bit further, just so that way we can see those. And then say they're like, you know what, we really don't want an older home. Let's do 2010 and newer. Well, now that's dropped that down to 17 houses from 117. So we can see there's quite a bit of a difference. Also, they want a bigger lot. They want a 0.2 acre lot, which isn't huge, but it's a little bit bigger. Say 0.25. So now we're down to 6 properties. So now we can give them a better idea of what actually is available, and it looks like this community is pretty much the only thing that's listed. I've actually I've sold homes in that neighborhood before, so then I would give them more information about it, and I would likely recommend they do a drive-by. If they're out of state and they can't drive by, I'd recommend doing Google Street View, doing as much online viewing as they can. And then if it came to actually seeing these homes in person, we'd schedule an appointment for them to come out, and we would speed date to see as many homes as we could. Typically not more than 10 in a day in a viewing, to get a good idea of the areas. But in a perfect world, we would have a list. They would come in, they would drive the areas, and then we would schedule appointments for the following day to make sure that they meet their sniff test before actually going to look at the homes and displacing a homeowner and all of those things. If a client cannot come in, say they are military and can't afford to fly in, I do virtual tours with them. I will normally use WhatsApp, so that way both spouses or any decision makers can see the videos. They can rewatch them over and over, and that way we're not live where they need to be remembering everything we talked about. Instead, they can rewatch the videos over and over. So I use WhatsApp for those videos, so it's easier to rewatch, and they can both see them and they can share them and all the things. But that's some basics on the multiple listing service and setting up the portal. So basically, if I was setting this up to a person, I would say save, set up auto link. I would put in their information here as a new client. Sometimes if you type in the name, if it doesn't fill in here, it's like it's an MLS kind of error. So then I don't bother filling out the rest of the stuff. I'll go back and then I'll do it again. And then I'll put in their information. So now it's filling here, so it actually will save. So then I'll put in their email address, I'll put them in as a buyer, and then I'll hit save. and that will then save them as a contact in the multiple listing service. I try to be as descriptive with my search criteria as possible in the subject line, one for you and two for them, so they understand what is hitting and what's not, because you will get the complaint. Well, somebody will say, I saw this house on Zillow, but I didn't see it on your portal. So this helps them know what your criteria was for them based on what they told them or told you. And in some cases, they were looking outside their criteria. They were going over budget or under square footage that you had set. So having a descriptive title is very helpful. This is the generic email verbiage. You can customize that. I recommend having your signature set up. You can go here to create your signature page or edit signature there. Here are those criterias for you so you can see. And then if somebody is really hot on the hunt, I'll normally have them set up as an ASAP if they don't have, 100 matches, if they have like under 15. Otherwise, I will have them on a daily email, because if you set up ASAP and they have 115 every single time a new listing hits or has a price adjustment or something, they are going to get an email and they will end up unsubscribing or marking you as spam because they will get bombarded with home emails. So otherwise, I would set them on a daily, and you could set them on a twice daily if it's something in between. Then you hit save. Now, to see what those home search portals look like, these are example of some portals that are set up. So I can go into the client's account. You can see their contact information. And then here's an auto email set up with that search criteria. And if I want to see what they see, I can go to open the One Home portal. So this is essentially the client's view as far as what listings are coming on. They can indicate if they like them and they don't. And they are able to see more information, not necessarily as much as we can see, but they can see, some of the tax information. They can see some of the ratings as far as commutes and schools, specs about the property itself, and they can request a showing through here. I typically will recommend that we schedule those beforehand, and the showings, and they just reach out to me directly via like text or email or a call. They can also leave notes, which I find very helpful for the client to leave notes, especially if there are multiple parties, husband and wife, that have access to the portal, so they can leave each other notes about what they like about a property or do not like. And the One Home portal is just one of the tools to set up a search. Like, I personally have my own website that does have IDX, so people can look on it at active listings, but also Real Scout is another option as well. I also have clients set up on Real Scout, and this is their ability to see homes on there as well. And there are some things that I dislike about Real Scout. So for example, this property right here, which my client had just asked about, it's showing active on here. However, I pulled that one up on the MLS earlier as an example, and here is that property. This 4629. So it's the same house. And it's showing active here. However, on the MLS, it's showing active option contract, that it was just updated. So it went under contract yesterday. However, they changed the status today, this morning, and it has not been updated on Real Scout. So that's one of the disadvantages, I think, of the Real Scout portal. However, it is nice to be able to see how many views a specific home has and what your client is interested in through this portal instead. They can also set up their own searches a little bit easier on this portal as well. So personally, I have found I set my clients up on Real Scout as just kind of a general tool, home valuations, market updates, and then also some auto nurture stuff. But if the client really gets hot and heavy about looking at homes and they're trying to acquire something quickly, then I will set them up on their own MLS portal with a similar search. And that way they're using the One Home portal, so it's a little bit more accurate and more timely. If you have more questions about tutorials like this or need some clarification, feel free to reach out to me. I hope this was helpful.